webinar on a subject which is very near and dear to us. And we have got a very wonderful faculty for this program. I will just share few of my thoughts before we start the program. Sorry. Just give me a minute. I'm sharing the screen. So I welcome you for this meeting at 6 p.m. And this is our learning objectives: understanding, improving the digital toxicity, so-called webinaritis and webinar fatigue syndrome. How to overcome the webinar fatigue syndrome? What are the new insights? How you can do it in a very different way? How to select or present a class apart webinar? What are the practical tips, steps? We have got a very learned faculty, Dr. Meenakshi Dhar, and I am the convener for this particular conference. Dr. Meenakshi is a professor and head of the Department of Internal Medicine, AIMS Rishikesh. She is a MD and in medicine and postgraduate diploma in geriatric medicine with an experience of 15 years. She is interested in teaching and research and lot of enthusiasm for innovating to enhance learning and involved in teaching the UG and PG students. Her research work is very phenomenal. More than 30 postgraduate theses involved in conducting various research projects at national and institutional level. There are over 65 national and international publications. She is a fellow of Indian Association of Clinical Medicine, and her main areas of interest are geriatrics, technology in medicine, presentation skills, and web-based innovations. These are a few questions which always come in my mind. Weekly, I get not less than 100 number of webinar intimations. The topics, what are the topics? Whether they are practical, whether they are accessible, available, affordable, and adaptable. At the same time, what are the priority points which I consider? I consider the faculty, what is the organization which is doing it, what is the subject, who is the sponsor, and when there is a sponsor, there is always a pressure to attend. Still, we have to select what we can practice in reality. What is the methodology? Is there any novelty? Are there any quizzes? Some trivia of information? Are sensible cartoons and jokes are there? It entertains and it glues you to the webinar. And what is the time duration? If the time duration is very long, then the people are frustrated, they are bored. What is the day which you are doing and what are the timings? 5 to 6, 6 to PM, 7 PM are the good timings, but when the target audience is in their busy in their practice, then they will have less attendance. Introductions, inaugurations, blessings, thanksgiving, that all distracts. And moderator, like what we have got Dr. Arun and Meenakshi today, is to sort out questions with avoiding pleasantries, interpraise attitude, personal comments, and over gesturing, etc. So these are my few views about a good webinar. I got some disclaimers. Purely, it is an academic self-improvement activity. There is no involvement of any pharmaceutical agency, hospital chain, equipment manufacturers, software developers, platforms for website or search engine, and the data which we are going to have of the attendees are not going to be shared, stored, or sold. So with this, I stop my screen sharing and I request Madam to start her session. We are going to have people join us from another link, and few of them are watching on the YouTube. Thank you, Dr. Meenakshi. The podium is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Kulkarni. I think you have summarized my whole presentation. You are an expert probably, and you have summarized it very well, that what I am going to talk about. And And I should, at the outset, I should thank you, Dr. Kulkarni, and other members of API Navi Mumbai chapter who for inviting me to speak on this unique topic of, how to overcome this webinar fatigue syndrome. It all started with the, first a process of inflammation. Now it has become a big syndrome. So we have to deal with it. We know that when the lockdowns and the community quarantines were implemented in many parts of the globe, suddenly everything became digital, including the traditional face-to-face conferences, trainings, classroom teachings, bedside clinics, even exit exams, and even marriages. So everything became digital. And this all gave rise to this, I call it inflammation, which has now, grown up into a webinar fatigue syndrome. So what I'm going to discuss in my presentation is that what is this webinar fatigue syndrome? And we can identify at the end of the presentation that are we the victims of this webinar fatigue? And if at all we are the victims, and I call us as the participants, as the patients, the when I'll move forward, I'll call them as the patients, and the doctors are organizers who are conducting these webinars. What is their role in, preventing the spread of this webinar fatigue syndrome? And I hope, touchwood, we have somehow curtailed the spread of this COVID-19. I hope this syndrome will be able to curtail very soon. So to start it, that it was a new pandemic which came into existence along with the COVID-19 pandemic. And webinar fatigue is actually a new term, and it is described as a feeling of tiredness or lack of energy towards webinars. And like any other disease which a human being suffers, everything has some cause, everything has some etiopathogenesis. So when I was making these presentations, I just wanted to give it a simile of a disease. So I tried to give headings as per we progress in we teach the students about the disease, first the definition, then the etiopathogenesis, and so on and so forth. So coming to the etiopathogenesis of this webinar fatigue syndrome, we all know that usage of this webinar has gradually increased during the COVID pandemic times. So webinar, and at the same time, we know that these webinars provide an effective tool to engage with stakeholders amid the dearth in physical events. Even it has helped us a lot in continuing in the medical education, teaching our medicine MBBS students as well as our residents during this pandemic time. Initially, it started as a compulsion, like we had no other choice. But now some people have understood the usefulness of this, especially the organizers. They have come to know that this is a very, money saving method of conducting webinars and conducting the various events. And we can get the best of the people to participate in the events at very low price. I mean, they don't, people are really interested in speaking, and they really want to share their knowledge. And it has helped all of us a lot. But at the same time, when we look at our, daily, these social media feeds, as Dr. Kulkarni said, that we see hundreds of webinar notices coming on our social media, that there are so many webinars and so many live streams are there. So we are always, overfeeding. We are always overfed with these webinars. So that I call it, this is because of the overfeeding of these items on the websites. So at the same time, I should say that even we as human beings have an over eagerness to learn new things. We know that, we want to grasp and learn anything which is coming in our way. And the reason for that over eagerness is, one is that its own self. The other reason, I think, is the peer pressure. I always think that if I don't register for this webinar, I may miss something which my peers will learn. So that peer pressure is also causing, engaging ourselves in many webinars. But we know that all of us have limited time and our own engagements. So because we have registered in so many webinars, and this all, enters or compels us to do multitasking at the time when we are attending the webinars. So what are the signs and symptoms? How can we diagnose that this is a person is suffering from a webinar fatigue syndrome? It has been seen that the reaction time to any external stimulus increases. There's constant rubbing of eyes. There's a constant fight with the spouse because you're always stuck with your computers, with your laptops, with your earplugs into your ears. So you're not listening to what is happening in the house. And because as Dr. Kulkarni said, that they have different timings of the webinars, and either you are at work, when you are at home, then you attend these webinars. And people start less indulging with friends and family members, and there is lethargy develops in people. I have devised these curb criteria. Just we have a curb 65 criteria, which tells us about the prognosis of the community-acquired pneumonia. Similarly, when I was coming across and making these presentations, I could relate it and give it a name of curb 19 criteria, the diagnostic criteria for webinar fatigue syndrome. For this, C stands for the constant irritation. U stands for urge to ignore invitations. R stands for react to any invitation even before looking at the topic. B is thinking of boycotting the webinar. And 19 stands for if the person comes with these 4 symptoms after the COVID-19 era, we can very well diagnose them as having this webinar fatigue syndrome. Jokes apart, this has a really scientific basis. You know that we are staring at the computers, but we tend to blink less frequently, and we sit in a same posture for prolonged period of time. Because of that, our body starts aching, and all of you must have observed that while we are attending some of the webinars, we tend to fall asleep because our brain goes into a stillness and we tend to fall asleep. There's a scientific basis behind this. Why does this occur? There have been studies which have shown that the evening exposure to this LE ebook phase delays the circadian clock, and it suppresses the melatonin, which has an important implications for understanding the impact of this technology on sleep and performance and health and safety of participants. So how can we avoid it as a participant? So that is what Dr. Kulkarni was basically saying, is that when we have too many options, we know that the global, that the global thought leaders are downloading their valuable gyan, and we don't want to miss that gyan. So we all want to attend everything and anything on this world, but we have to, be very choosy, or we have to make our own priorities. We have to set our own goals. And while we are coming across these webinars, we have to identify which one to attend. That we can only do if we have our own goals set in. And how many can I attend? Because you are the right person to know how much time you have and how many you can attend. The solution, so these are the 2 questions which you need to ask before you register for yourself for any webinar. So the answer is also in the to these questions, only 2 answers. So first is that you prioritize, and second is that you have to attend only those by which you can avoid your multitasking. So, do you realize that most of us are multitasking most of the times? We are texting while we are walking, we are sending emails while we are in the meetings, we are chatting on phones while we are cooking dinner. This I most of the times do, and we make telephone calls while driving or walking on the roads. In today's world, it is, it's expected that doing just one thing at one time is downright and luxurious. It's wasteful, and it's considered out of fashion these days. We think that as multitaskers, we are the great achievers. Wow, but that's not right. Actually, multitasking is damaging our brain. It's putting a cognitive overload on our brain. It dulls us, and it definitely retards our response time. And it has been seen in studies that the multitasking, it makes us less productive, and most of the time is spent in switching the task rather than doing the task actually. There's a Gay Winch, who's the author of Emotional First Aid States. He has written in his book that what actually we call multitasking is task switching. So most of the time is spent in setting our brain at a new task rather than accomplishing the job at that time. So because of that, it affects our concentration very badly, and we are not able, we don't remain alert, and our intelligence definitely get affected by all these things. So it has been always also been seen that while we are multitasking and juggling between two different activities, because of that, we are not able to concentrate on what is being said. For example, if we are attending a webinar or a debate, or we are attending any important meeting, and at the same time we are texting some WhatsApp message to some of our friends. So whatever has been said in the meeting, sometimes we are not able to recollect it later on. So that means there's a poor learning, and poor recollection of events also occurs. And very important thing, which most of us, you must have also faced, is that we tend to make more errors when we are doing too many things at one time. And I don't know how many of you have faced it, but I have faced it a lot of times. Like, I am sitting in a meeting and writing a WhatsApp message to somebody else, which I wanted to go to somebody else, and it went to somebody else, and I had to cut a sorry figure. So it's not always wise to do multitasking at when you are doing. If you do it for a simple things, that's okay, but not for very complex procedures. When we are doing very two important things, we should not do multitasking. And it has been seen that it also kills our creativity. When attention hops from one problem to another problem, concentration suffers, and the creativity, if we have some, we cannot give innovative ideas in a job which we are doing at that point of time. So it definitely kills our creativity. And you must have also observed that the children these days are, very anxious. That is because they are doing multitasking most of the time. And the reason for this anxiety is that when we are doing too many jobs at one point of time, we are not, completing any one task at its stipulated time. So that gives rise to a lot of anxiety. And it does not cause only the physical fatigue, but as it also causes the psychological fatigue as well. There's a myth that, if we don't do too many things at one time, or we don't do multitasking, we are wasting time. But actually that's wrong. It's actually that when we are doing multitasking, a lot of time is spent in attention switching, and a lot of time is spent on resetting our attention on the new task. So actually we waste more time than we think we are saving. At the same time, it lowers the quality of work and reduces the performance, and it makes project completion much longer. And sometimes you must have seen on WhatsApp or so many social media faces that people on meetings, they get calls from somewhere, they don't know that their mic is on, they keep on talking to the other person, and sometimes it gives a lot of embarrassment to them. So to stay away from all these things, we have to stop this multitasking, and that will be done only if we prioritize our webinars. So how we prioritize our webinars? It is that we attend the ones that contribute to our goals. As Dr. Kulkarni said, that we have to set our goals first, and then see that which webinars are focused on our goals. And then even the webinars which are focused or which are for your goals, even in them you have to make three choices: the must attend, could attend, or should attend. And against every webinar, you write the time when what is the timing of the webinar, so that you don't miss the important ones. And those who who are not that important, even if you miss them, that will be okay. The very important thing is that after, we may attend so many webinars, we have to keep some adequate time for revision and notes. So making notes after the webinars is very important. Ultimately, why do we attend the webinars? We attend these webinars only to learn something new. But if we don't make our own notes, or if we don't, learn, or we don't revise what we have learned in that webinars, or we don't convert them into an action, then it is fruitless. So for that, we have to allot some time for the self-development in a day or a week. So at the same time, we have to cater for our family time, so that we don't have fight with our spouse, with children. We have to take a good sleep, do exercise, and keep some time for the entertainment, etc. And so that we can live a quality and a balanced life. So the time which we have devoted to the self-development, that time has to be given to these books, articles, TV debates, and webinars. So if we discipline ourselves to watch the webinars within these guidelines, definitely we'll avoid this webinar fatigue syndrome. So this was for the participant, how they can find that whether they are the victim of this webinar fatigue syndrome, and if they are, or if they don't want to be the victim of this webinar fatigue syndrome, they should follow these guidelines. Now, at the same time, how an organizer, how an event organizer, because he also has a responsibility. I call him a doctor, because if a patient, if a participant is suffering from a webinar fatigue syndrome, he
यूट्यूब वाला ईमेल डालता है कि थोड़ा और 2 दिन और चाहिए हम लोग.
He had to become out of this webinar fatigue syndrome. For that, the organizer is there. So organizer has to, find the ways how this webinar fatigue syndrome can be overcome. It has been seen that because due to the latest turn in the events, the world of virtual events and the dissatisfaction experienced by the virtual attendees leaves event organizers in quite a tricky situation. And because this online webinars are still the only option by which we can conduct these webinars. There are only few places where the lockdowns have been opened and the webinars or these conferences are have become a reality, but still most of the areas we still have to rely on this virtual platform till now. So they still have a lot of, but we should realize that they still, these online webinars still have a lot of potential, and if they follow some rules of conducting these webinars or these online sessions, they can really give their attendees a very good and good experience. And they should not just conduct webinars back to back, but the attendees should be able to take some lifetime experiences from these webinars. So we all know that content always reigns. That's just the way it is. And one way to keep event very interesting is by giving your attendees the variety, because unless and until you don't have a variety in your event, the attendees are bound to become bored, and they will suffer from this webinar fatigue syndrome. So their content doesn't have to be limited only to the scientific sessions. The other important things need to be involved incorporated into these. So how can we do all these things? The first thing is that we have to gamify our events. So how can we gamify our events? It can be done, this gamification of the events can be done by, we allocate the points for each activity, and by, like, for example, answering the polls, asking questions, and at the same time we can put a leaderboard where the scores of the different attendees are shown, and when attendee sees his name at the top of the board, they always feel elated. We should plan a virtual bingo to facilitate the networking among his attendees, and the host quizzes related to a particular session should be followed when these organizers are organizing the event. At the same time, we have to engage these attendees in the conference or in the events. You must be, we still remember that when we used to have these physical conferences, and the live polling was a very important event in those physical conferences. This is an advantage. This gives the attendees feeling that they become very active involved in the session, and it also helps the speaker to to deviate or to move in the direction of the attendees want the speaker to move in. At the same time, can a session, do you know that can a session be complete without a designated question and answer session? The answer is no. That's why you need a platform that allows attendees to submit their questions to the speakers. And at the same time, this conversation should continue with each of them. But at the same time, we want that there should be no interruptions when the speaker is speaking. So for that, we have the real-time chat facilities. So attendees can put in their questions, give the comments on the speaker's topic, discuss among each other, even in the real when the physical events were occurring, that time also the attendees used to have the side talks. So this can be a part of a side talk when they put their queries, put their questions, and put their comments in the chat box. And at the same time, it's always better to host a virtual event in bits and pieces. As you know that it's not possible to sit all together for 3-4 hours in front of a screen and listen to the webinar. It becomes really boring. So while attendees have no problem staying in live events throughout a day, or they can even spend 3-4 days for one event also, that's not a problem for them. But the same thing doesn't happen with the virtual events. They can't sit in front of the camera the whole day. So that's why the event has to be spread over days, or over days with more frequent breaks. But the only problem is that we think that will they return after the break? So they can return after the break. It's only that if you send them the reminders through the WhatsApps, and give them some messages so that they come back. And the very important thing is that each session should not be more than 45 to 1 hour, more than that, because the attention span is only 35 minutes. But if the presenter is very good, they can stay up to 45 minutes, but not beyond that. And in between every session, it's must that there has to be a break of at least 20 minutes. Most of the sessions we see that when there are physical sessions, 15 minutes talk with a 5 minutes break. So that becomes a very hectic on an online session. It's not possible that people's attendees sit in front of the computers for the whole time. So at the same time, we have to make the attendees feel that yes, they have attended something very different what they had previously attended. So event organizers, they have to make a difference. They have to make it a real-time experience for the attendees. When we say experience, that means that the attendees want to take an active role in the event, and they experience something as opposed as being a passive listeners only. So how to do this, how to make it as a lifetime experience? You can give you can give them something to remember, something to cherish when they leave that webinar, or when after attending that webinar, they have something to talk about that webinar. So this can be done by making your event more diverse and more inclusive. This is because at inclusive events, attendees feel that the sense of belongingness, and which in turn makes it a positive experience. So attendees may take some time to unwind and give some time to unwind and relax. The another option for this organizer is that they can generate this, they can do this virtual reality shows also, but that becomes a very costly affair. And if their budget permits, they should definitely go for this as well. So who doesn't like good surprises? When you tell attendees that there is some good news which is coming up during the event, or it will be announced somewhere later in the event, there's a tendency that most of the attendees will remain tuned in. They'll stay there and wait for that surprise. And one thing is that we may not give them a very big surprise. That's okay. Do something very unexpected. That increases their excitement quotient. They may be waiting for something unexpected to come. So what unexpected gifts you can give them? You give them a digital card to buy a virtual lunch hour. You host a party, virtual after party once the event is over, or you give an impromptu soap session where you can invite your audience to speak. So they really love all these things. Okay, so these are some of the points which if the organizer incorporates in their sessions, definitely it is going to make a difference in their presentations, make a difference to the audience, make them as a lifetime experience, and this will definitely prevent them from webinar fatigue syndrome, And that's all I have to say. And I hope that these things will help the audience in case they are distracted. Probably they will be, because we can't erase all external interruptions. We give them a nudge to draw attention back to the event, and sometimes we fail. But no plan is foolproof. And what is important is that we remove at least those distractions which are possible for an organizer or for a speaker to do. And whatever is not under our control, we can't help it. And at the same time, this all will help us to fight against this new pandemic, that is webinar fatigue syndrome. And I hope as we have fought against this COVID-19 pandemic at the same pace and with the same enthusiasm, we'll definitely overcome this webinar fatigue syndrome. And this will no longer be a syndrome anymore, because people will learn different ways to engage their attendees, to engage the audience, and move ahead. And because human race has a tendency to learn new things and accept whatever comes in their ways and move ahead. I hope we all will definitely overcome this syndrome. And thanks a lot. That's what I just want to say in summary.
Thank you, Dr. Meenakshi. It was really wonderful, and you have stuck to your time. It was absolutely like a TED talk. So 25 minutes, 24 slides, and a lot of information. Can you stop sharing your screen?
Yes.
Can you stop sharing the screen? Yes, and we are very lucky to have so many class of our audience. Dr. R.C. Kokani, can you unmute yourself? I will really like to see you after a long time. Dr. Kokani is my teacher, actually. The very senior cardiologist from Sion. And I keep this discussion open for all our participants. Babita, Madhavi, you can ask questions. Bhai Mangesh is there. Bhai Mangesh was a very dynamic physician from Navi Mumbai. He was he was associated with our conference as a joint organizing secretary, and very effective person in all the academic activities. Before everybody starts, I just have only one session. What do you mean by box session? Meenakshi madam, what do you mean by soapbox session? You said something like soapbox session. Your audio is clear, is not proper. I was saying Dr. Evlekar also. Dr. Evlekar is a past dean of Sion Hospital, and Dr. Madhvi, you are welcome. Babita Ghodke, she is my colleague from MGM Medical College. She is a good teacher and very dynamic in COVID care. Babita, any questions? Vandana, we have got another Meenakshi with us. Meenakshi Kure. Then Dr. Prashant Thorat is a very dynamic social worker ophthalmologist from our group. Kishore Bhai, you can have your questions. He is always there in all my presentations, as well as Dr. Bindu. Hello. Hello. Audibility, audible आहे का सगळं व्यवस्थित रे? You can speak. I think Dr. Meenakshi has by mistake logged out. Kokhani sir.
Hello. Sorry, sir.
Yeah, now you are audible. Yes. Lost in the web. Lost in the web.
I joined from a
I
phone
just
now.
wanted to know what do you mean by box session?
I suppose it is just like a, the chit system, like the children play, they put some chits in the boxes, and then, by the lottery system, you go to every participant or attendee, you pick up a chit, and whatever comes in that chit, they have to speak on that, on that, it's just a children play the game. They have to speak on
Okay.
that.
Okay. Can you give us certain more tips on how to sit for the webinar, how to dress for the webinar, what are the lighting things which are required? Because I recall your presentation in ACP. It was really wonderful, and the slides are also so nice. So all my viewers, if you can recollect, Meenakshi Madam's slides were very nice, and they were square ones. Means the slides which we normally make they are of a horizontal fashion, and sometimes they are not visible very properly on the screen, or sometimes they cut their corners. Any
I
other
think
practical points,
sir.
madam, from your side?
Dr. Kishore here. Dr. Kishore Jumani here, sir. Hello.
Dr. Kishore wants to say something. Give Dr. Kishore.
I think you should have some lucky draws for the attendance. So there may be more attendance also. And not only that, the person who asks best question, he should be given some gift voucher or something like that. That will create more interest in the attendees, as well as it will be very live conversation also.
Yeah, the only problem with this is the net connectivity. Sometimes what happens that when when we go for these live question answer sessions, the answers are so delayed that the presenter has to wait for a lot of time. So the net connectivity should be, very good internet connectivity should be there. Then it hardly matters that whether you're sitting face to face or you're very far away from each other. Net connection is the one problem which usually we face when we do these live sessions, because most of the times we do it in the classrooms for the most of the classes are being conducted like that only. But if the like the conferences which we had, I think the ACP con which was done this time, it was really very good, and we never got bored during that conference. That was, I think, I don't know much about that because it was Dr. Muruganathan actually who wanted me to speak on this. And after that, I have started learning, and reading about this. How can we innovate things, and how can we, move ahead in this? But I should never consider myself as an expert to say about these things. But yes, I'm learning, and probably you all people are doing a good job.
Yeah. Thank you. You will be very happy. We are joined by past president of Geriatric Society, Dr. Anand Amli. Anand, welcome. Anand is from Bijapur and is the past president of Geriatric Society of India. He has got a wonderful department of geriatrics, and some of his concepts are really very, very practical, and they should be followed by Kokhani sir. Prashant Bhai, I think what Dr. Meenakshi said is absolutely right, that when there is a low connectivity on either side, then the conversation gets delayed. I got few more tips also, that if you are using a laptop, don't keep too many windows of laptop open. When too many windows are open, then it becomes a problem, and you cannot even search your own presentation. Vandana, Vandana from our group, she is a prolific writer and a poet. Any comments from your side? Arun?
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing, sir. I think that when we are having these online sessions, if the net connectivity is good, all of should keep their cameras on, because otherwise, we don't get connected with each other. But because we always have a connectivity problem, so we tell most of the people to shut their cameras. Because I remember in the beginning when our kids started this online session, the teachers used to tell them sub camera on karke rakho. But now because too many students are there, so they also keep their cameras off. Otherwise, keeping the camera on, I find it very useful and very interactive. Hello, have we